We are going to be in Luke 7, verses 1 through 10. I believe that's what we read today. It starts out, "Now when he had concluded all his sayings in the hearings of the people, he entered Capernaum." When I first read this, I thought, oh, okay, and I kind of breezed over that part. Until I read later in this text that you probably need those sayings. Because what he's about to do in Capernaum directly relates back to that. So before then, what he was talking about, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I tell you? Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you what he is like. He is a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock. And when the flood arose, the stream broke against the house and it could not shake it." This is just some background on what he's actually talking about. He's telling people, look, why do you come to me and say, "Oh Lord," and then don't do what I say? We have this same problem today, all the time. We have a problem and we say, "Oh Lord, now I need you." But when everything's going right, we kind of put our head down and keep going, right? Or we say, "Hey Lord, you need to show up because this is really bad. Our nation's in a really bad spot, so you need to show up." What's he say about that? "And a certain centurion's servant who was dear to him was sick and ready to die. So when he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him, 'Come and heal his servant.' And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that one of whom he should do this was deserving. For he loves our nation, and he has built us a synagogue." Now, does anybody know what a centurion was? Anybody? Kind of, yeah. So, a centurion back then was kind of like a captain in the army, okay? So, a centurion would have about 100 people to 300 people under him, okay? So, he would have soldiers and servants to do his bidding. They were typically feared in the community or respected. Typically, they were feared because the Roman soldiers were not to be trifled with. Roman soldiers would just come in your house, throw you out. Centurions wouldn't do that. They'd send servants to do that for him. He has servants to do whatever he wants. Typically, these people were wealthy, but these people had one thing against them. Each Roman legion was comprised of nearly 5,000 men divided into multiple chorts. Each chort composed of multiple centuries. As a result, a legion could contain as many as 60 centuries. Centurions. Their importance was based on seniority, and the senior centurion in a legion being in a position of great prestige. Some historians have compared the top-level centurions to medieval knights. Roman centurions represented the bridge between enlisted troops and commissioned officers. Now, what they were expected to do was to lead their troops into battle. Centurions were always found on the front lines next to their people. They were battle-hardened. They were not nice people. These were men of war that have proved themselves time and time again. When they wanted something, it was done. Typically, in the cities, if you were higher than a centurion, you're in the government. If you were lower than them, you're their servant. That's how that went. Now, this centurion, he didn't send servants to Jesus. Who did he send? Well, so when he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews. Which means these Jews knew him and respected him. They came to Jesus and said, "This man is worthy, you should do this for him." Said the elders of the Jews, of a centurion. What did the centurion say, though? Then Jesus went with them, and when he was already not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him. Now he's sending his people, not the Jews, saying, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Therefore, I did not even think myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man placed under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and another, 'Come,' and he comes. And to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does this." So, initially he sent the elders of the Jews. And they came to Jesus and said, this guy really cares about his servant. Now, when you read servant here, please don't think that this was just a man that centurion liked. Read that slave. It is the same exact word. I looked it up in the Greek. It's the same exact word. We translate it servant because most likely they worked inside. This was a slave to the centurion. He has hundreds of people under him, and he cares for this one. That tells you something about this man's character. He is leagues above the others. It also tells you something about his character when the Jews come to him and they say, "He built us a synagogue." He is wealthy. He is very wealthy. The Jews tell Jesus, "You have to come and save this man's servant. You have to come to the house and you have to heal him." What does the centurion say? No. Don't come. I am not worthy even to talk to you. Just say the word and it'll be done. What was Jesus just talking about? You call me Lord, Lord, but you don't do what I say. You believe I'm Lord? By the way, Lord, back then, when you said Lord, it meant high prestige. And in this context, all capitals, it meant controller of life and death. This centurion certainly believed that he controlled life or death. And that he didn't need to come and do some spell. He didn't need to come and put hands on him. He could just say it. Maybe he knew his history back in, Genesis. When God did what? He formed the earth. He just molded it, right? No. He said, do it. Just let it be. Let there be light. And he said it, and it was. The centurion had enough faith to go, just say it. You don't have to show up. I wonder today how much faith that we would have to say that. When we get in trouble, when we have hurt people, when we have sick people, and we say, Jesus, you need to come and save this person. No. We can look at another situation where this was. I'm going to be reading out of John 11. Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went, met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Do you see the difference here? Martha says, "But if you had been here to put hands on him, this wouldn't happen. Jesus, you're late." What did the centurion say? Just say it. Just say it. It'll be done. You don't have to come. I get you're busy. I know how this servant thing works. Just say the words and he'll be healed. You don't have to come here. That's a far cry from what Martha says, isn't it? Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and will rise again with the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said, I am the resurrection and life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, he shall live. And everyone who lives and believes shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming." Do you know how he raised Lazarus after that? Did he go in there and he just put back together what was broken? Remember, he'd been dead 4 days. I don't know if you know a whole lot about decomposition, but after 4 days, there's a smell. There's a smell, and the body is not so well. It's not doing so hot. Jesus stood at the tomb entrance and said, "Lazarus, come out." And it said he started to come out. You notice what he did? He spoke it. Just like the centurion asked him to do. It's almost like the centurion knew his history. The question that begs answering: do we know our history? When we ask God, "Show up, where are you?" what are we saying? You can only do it if you're here. I need to see you. No, he only needs to speak the words. We all ask him to be with this person. He just needs to speak the words. This centurion had so much faith in Jesus that he said, my house is not even worthy for you to be in. Now, let's back up a little bit. Where was Jesus found? Among who? The royals? No. Matter of fact, the Pharisees tried to chastise him for being found with tax collectors and murderers, reclining at table with them. He wasn't found at the royals' tables. Why? Anybody know? Correct. I came to save the sick. because, see, he wasn't going to do any good over there. See, a lot of times when we're asking God to do something, we ask him to show up. We ask him to be present with us. We don't ask for something to be done. We ask for him to show up, and we know it will happen. In a lot of the prayers in the Bible, they never ask. A lot of the prayers don't ask for their problems to be gone. They ask for strength to overcome their problems. Lord, give me the strength to get through this issue. Lord, give me the strength to bear this persecution. In Rome, they knew this very well. The Jews were persecuted all the time in Rome. All over Rome, all their territories. You have to remember what happened following the great scattering. They literally just come in and were like, we're rounding you all up and killing you. And still, the prayer was, give us strength to get through this. At that time, God was saying, go. Spread the word. Go. So they did. When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him and turned around and said to the crowd that followed him, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Jerusalem, or not even in Israel. And those who were sent, returning to the house, found that the servant was well, who had been sick. Now, when I first read this, I was like, yeah, the centurion just didn't want to go. Right? That's how I read it. But there's a difference when you keep reading. Because I'm going to tell you right now that if Jesus, Son of Man, God incarnate, turns around to the servant and it says he marveled, maybe we should take a second look at what was done. Because if Jesus, the Christ, is marveling at the words, maybe we should too. See, Jesus seen the incredible faith that the centurion had. There's only a few times in Scripture, ever, where it says Jesus marveled. This is the only one that I could find. I'm sure it's happened once other. When Jesus does that, we need to take a second look. And I looked at that and I was like, oh. And I start realizing things like, he didn't send servants. He sent the elder Jews. These aren't just Jews that show up to the synagogue on Saturday or Sunday, whatever day they met, just random crowd members. These were the elders. These were the people leading the synagogue. He sent them. And the fact that they were willing to go and say, this guy is worthy, you should do this for him. That meant he had a great reputation with these people. The people that the centurions historically oppressed. This is one of those times that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Just because he's a centurion doesn't mean he's evil. Most of them were. Remember where most of them came from. The front lines of war. And not just war of we're going to shoot you, 300 meters off. This was down in the trench warfare. Man on man. These guys were hardened. These guys were typically mean because they had to be to survive. But this guy had compassion. He obviously had generosity. He built them a synagogue. He obviously had their trust because they went to Jesus and said, this man is worthy. But what did he do right after they did that? He sent his servants and said, oh, no. Don't be saying that. I am not worthy. I am not worthy to be in your presence, let alone talk to you, let alone have you in my house. Do we have that attitude? Do we have that attitude towards God? Do we have the humble attitude of, we are literally not worthy to stand in your presence? We've seen the effects. Remember when Moses come down from the mountain? What happened? No one could even look at him. And God just passed by. Do we have that same reverence that a centurion, somebody who didn't need anything, have? He had servants that would go and get him whatever he wanted and bring it to him. He didn't even have to go get it. Here's what I'm going to let you in on a big secret. Generally, it holds true. The wealthier you are, the harder faith is to have. You'll see wealthy people give $1. And then you'll see poor people give their whole paycheck. Why? Because the poor people know you've got it worse than me. You go. I can't believe the faith that the centurion had, knowing that the position that he was in. You have to remember, though, centurions were not all powerful. That was a position that could be ripped from you. It was in high competition. So if the other ones thought you were getting weak, I'm taking that from you. He took a huge risk coming to the Jews and saying, you're people too. I'm going to pay for your synagogue. I'm going to do nice things for you. That's a huge risk for him. He could lose his standing. And obviously he did it time after time because the elders respected him. Do we do the same thing? I've asked myself this a whole lot on different passages. Do I have the proper reverence for God? We actually talked about this in our study Saturday. Having the proper reverence for God. We represent the Creator. I think the word we used was ambassadors. We are God's ambassadors. Do we have that same reverence, that same awestruck as a centurion? Do we truly believe that what you say, it will happen? That's a hard question to ask. Do we love what God loves? do we marvel at what God marvels at? Because a lot of times you'll read this and you'll go, yeah, he just sent a servant. That's fine. He paid some people to go. But you know it's real because Jesus turned around and went, oh, wow. Wow. Really? I haven't seen this amount of faith in all of Israel. Then you read the passage from Martha and Mary. Hey, if you were here, this wouldn't have happened. These were his people. Israelites. There's his people. But if you were here, it wouldn't have happened. And Jesus is like, okay, show me where 2 is. Do you see the difference in faith? Do you see the difference that faith brings? One has faith enough to say, yeah, if you show up, we're protected. And one has faith enough to say, well, if you say it, it'll be done. There's another passage that reminds me of this. It's when they were crossing the Sea of Galilee. Anybody know that story? What happened? Yeah. Yeah. A great storm came, and all the people on the boat come down to Jesus sleeping. And they're like, we gonna die, and you sleeping. Hey, we gonna die. And he just rolled over and was like, you not have faith that I am who I say I am? Okay, fine. Stop. Bedtime. These were disciples, by the way. These were his people that tracked with him. See, it's not about how close physical proximity you are to God. That doesn't measure your faith. It's obviously not about how many miracles you see, because the disciples seen them all. It's obviously not about what lineage you're in. Faith is something that is very personal to each person. Faith is hard to build. It needs to be exercised. Sometimes we need to walk out in faith and say, okay, God, I know that you want me to do this. I don't know where it's leading, but I know you want me to do this. I'm going to tell you what, I had one of those moments this morning when I got a text that said, I'm not coming. And I was like, honey, I'm sick. No, you're not. You had that crisis of faith, like, okay, yeah, I'm going. Okay. Just do it. Them are moments that you'll know real quick. Do I have faith that God will do what he says he does? He says, I will be with you. I will speak for you. I will help you. And you say, okay. And you start flipping through going, you better start helping. Because this man can barely read. That's called faith. And I'm not saying that I have great faith, trust me. Because up until I was like 21, yeah, there was not a lot of faith there. My wife can tell you that. I was a little wild. Really wild. Bad. But I've come to the realization that we serve the creator of everything. He literally built everything with a word. And he can destroy everything with a word. We read in the Battle of Armageddon, what does he do? He sends his great army out. Nope. Nope. He says, done. Death. It's really like a build up to this great battle, and then Jesus comes down and he's like, I got this. Done. With a word. Do we have faith that God will do what he says he's going to do? If you get a chance this week, read through Luke 6 and Luke 7. You're going to find a whole lot to help you with faith. You're going to find a whole lot of things that are very hard to swallow. Like in Luke 6, when he says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you to? Well, if you're being honest with yourself, that's going to be hard words to swallow. Why do I say, Lord, Lord, when I'm not doing his commandments? Luke 6 and Luke 7 is a great way to, check your faith. We'll say that. It's very, you'll realize a lot of stuff that you're doing. We'll say that. It's a good faith check. So if you get a chance this week, read Luke 6 and Luke 7. Tell me what you think.